I wanted to talk about something that happened with Tyler. One of many situations that happened with Tyler that really damaged him. And I wanted to talk about this because I really believe that people don't understand children with autism. They don't understand that, how enlightened they actually are, and how they've come to this earth to teach us where we should really be. And if you look at the so-called disability, it's you take a child with autism and they don't think about ego, they don't think about society, they don't care about what people think, they try to stay within like a happy, light all the time, except for when they're put into a box, and that's when you see these so-called behaviors, and you want to call a child with autism violent, and or some, and it's really, take this perspective, think about it. If you had a voice and didn't know how to express it, and you have somebody constantly telling you to go against that voice, what are you going to do? How are you going to act? Like, you have somebody telling you, no, you're not supposed to feel that way. That's not right. Nope, you can't feel that way. And you're saying internally, yeah, but I do feel that way. And yeah, I do see spirits. And yeah, I do talk to them. And you have society saying, nope, no, you don't. How frustrating would that be? Think about it. How frustrating would that be? And then you have these schools that, want you to conform into a box, and where, maybe that day the kid wants to listen to his favorite cartoon, and, because he's thinking about some other planet that he used to live on, and how he was dancing around in the stars, and yet he's told, no, you can't listen, you have to pay attention, you have to follow these rules. Well, whose rules? Why? What are the rules for? And don't get me wrong, I understand that, children with autism, sometimes they, have trouble with self-help skills, and dressing, and, going to the bathroom, and, those, I understand that's, a big, it can be a big problem, because you can't be self-sufficient. But if these children, were more understood, and, more supported, with what they see and feel, who's to say that can't, those things can't be taught in a more compassionate way, other than like, doing trials and saying, well, you got to learn this, you got to learn A, B, C, D. Well, why? Is that what spirits are doing? Is that what, like, the universe is doing? and these children are so connected, it's like they're using another side of their brain. So, I just wanted to say a little bit about that, but what happened at this particular school is that I went to go pick up Tyler every day, and I was outside with Cole, and literally 1 minute before I went to go pick him up, I'm sitting there waiting outside, and it's never this long. So, I called in and I said, what's going on? I've been waiting here like 15 minutes, and they say, well, we're dealing with a behavior. Okay. And I said, well, let me go in, and, he knows I'm there, we could just go. If I see him, he's going to come with me. Nope. We have to follow our rules. We have to follow our trials. We have to follow, protocol. 1 minute before. Meanwhile, this kid can read minds, see spirits, and probably sensed, okay, I'm going to be there in 1 minute. I still am not 100% sure what happened that 1 minute that set him apparently off. But in their mind, they felt that because he started to get upset over whatever, which I can guarantee it was probably, he wanted to get his iPad, or, he wanted to, he knew that I was coming, and he wanted to go. He wanted to go home for the day. And apparently that 1 minute, changed his life. And they said to me, well, we've got to do our trials. We've got to, get him calm. And okay, I thought that was completely and utterly ridiculous, and it was all ego, basically, to say, nope, you have to be controlled, you have to listen to us, and you have to follow the rules. For what? He was leaving for the day. Well, that spiraled into him hitting himself in the face twice, giving himself a bloody nose twice, and I only know all of this because I forced myself to see the video that they had, which they were supposed to save, and I can guarantee at this point that video is destroyed. I'm surprised I'm keeping it together. I guess maybe I have released, some of this pain. So they proceeded to do their trials and their control tactics, and it just spiraled into getting worse and worse and worse. And from the video that I saw, he was hitting himself in the face, gave himself bloody nose twice. They stood over him and just watched him, and just stood there. They just stood there. And it was such a horrible thing to see, and for him to witness, or experience. What happened after that is after maybe, 20 minutes or 25, I can't even remember how long, I went up to the front of the school, and I said, I demanded that I go in and get him. I knew that, this was at the point where this is not good. I knew it. And they, refused to let me go down there. And they told me to go around the back of the building and go in that way. And I went around the back, and meanwhile Cole was with me, and now we're probably at 35 minutes, so I went to the back of the building, stood at the door. There was some staff member that looked at me and said, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, the principal told me to come down around here to get my son." There's an issue going on. And he said, "Okay, wait here." And he scurried in to probably, I suppose, make sure, God knows what was going on. And then, a couple minutes later he comes out. At this point we're about 45 minutes into after I showed up. And I walked in, and I went into the room, and there were 7 staff members pinning him down. 7 staff members. He wasn't even moving. He was just staring up at the ceiling, and just with this glazed look on his face. And when I walked in, they scurried off him like rats. Just scurried off. And I stood over him, and it was almost like he looked at me like I was some kind of angel. I almost in that particular moment visualized a bright light going down on him. And maybe this was before I've learned some skills, so maybe instinctively I did this, is that I just visualized this bright light, going down on him. He was lying on the floor, no shoes on, and just staring up at the ceiling. He wasn't there. And I stood over him, and I visualized this bright light going down on him, and I said, Tyler, it's me, Mommy." And he looked at me, and I could see his eyes glaze over and come back to me. And he just looked at me, and as soon as he recognized me, he stood up. And as soon as I repeated it again, "It's Mommy, it's me, Tyler, it's Mommy." And he looked up at me, and I finally could see that he was back in there. And he stood up, and almost I could see this sigh of relief, and he just, I took his hand, got his shoes back on, and we walked out of that place. And the staff members had the nerve to say to me, "Do you want to hear what happened?" And I remember just turning to them and saying, "No, get out of my way." And we walked out of that school, and he never went back. Never. And that day, I promised myself that I would not let that happen to him again. Made a mistake later on, and but not like that. And it's just such a shame that these schools just feel like they have to put these children in a box. It's like, you have no idea what their potential is. It's like, I can't tell you. It's what he's taught me is amazing, and what he's taught me that's out there, and like, you know, there's more to, like, what we see. There's more to this facade. There's more, and these children came to this earth to teach us that, to teach us. And you know, I've been lucky enough to be chosen to, you know, speak his words, and to, you know, speak for him because he can't speak. And, you know, he can type and he can tell me, and I can instinctively feel what he's feeling. And, you know, he just wants to be understood and liked. You know, he's typed to me how these schools, they don't like him. And you know, it's funny, throughout all of these years, every time we had, I also had therapists come into my house, and, you know, instinctively I could tell that certain ones, you know, didn't like him and didn't want to be around him, and he could too, and he would have behaviors for them. And the ones that he knew liked them, him, you know, he worked beautifully for. And you know, it's you know, to be able to talk through telepathy, and to be able to see what's beyond the veil, to see, like, open your eyes and see what's out there in the universe, that's a pretty special thing. And these kids have it, and our society has squashed that. And, you know, I guess by me posting this, I guess I'm trying to unsquash it. I'm trying to shed the light to say, you know, maybe we need to listen to these kids, you know, think a different way. I mean, yes, they need to, you know, be taught, you know, self-help skills, so that, you know, they can dress, and they can, you know, take care of, you know, their body, but we could do it in a much more compassionate way, other than, you know, pinning them down and trying to make them conform to this society, because that's not what's out there. You know, when we're done with this particular lifetime, you know, I believe we come back over and over again, and you know, to learn our lessons. And you know, people who use control and ego and just meanness, you know, they're gonna have to come back and relive that. And I don't know, you know, I mean, hopefully maybe we can make a shift and make a change, and, you know, we can change things.